You are listening to a recording from the Cooperating to Build a Better Nova Scotia conference in Halifax, a celebration marking the United Nations International Year of Cooperatives.
Thank you for this opportunity to be able to bend your ear for a couple of minutes. I've had the privilege of being able to attend a few of these wonderful events that have happened this year in the IYC, the International Year of Cooperatives. And you quickly see, even if there are folks from around the world but somehow connected with the co-op movement, that there's, within the conversation and within 1 minute, you can determine that there are lots of values that you share. But there's something very unique about coming to a conference in Nova Scotia, and that is that within 1 minute, you're already talking about how it is that you're related. That's one thing I find particularly exciting. And I am from Nova Scotia originally, so I can participate in those conversations too. It's normally about 2 degrees in which you're related, so I like that. Although I did hear someone today determine that they were cousins, actually, so that's exciting. So I did want to bring greetings from the Canadian Cooperative Association. Throughout 2012, this International Year of Cooperatives, we've been keeping our finger on the pulse of what's happening across this great country in terms of the co-op movement. And we've definitely seen some major innovations in terms of us cooperating together, of course, our 6th principle. And Nova Scotia always stands out as a movement that is just, drawing attention like no other province does. People being unreasonable in the amount of attention they're drawing to the movement. And certainly we saw the flags on the bridge earlier this year. We saw, and I met someone today actually who was not involved in the co-op movement, but saw those flags. And I said, what did you do? Did you go, Google that or go to the website when you got home? And he said he did, so it worked. And also having events where you invited Michael J. Fox. There's a profile to the movement that you always bring to attract new people to want to learn about and get involved in the movement. And I think that should be celebrated in the work certainly that the Nova Scotia Co-op Council is doing, but also in everyone that is involved in the movement. I also want to acknowledge our universities that are taking major leadership in research on cooperatives and educating students, and our current leaders and our future leaders in the movement, because that's making a big impact as well. And also these universities are involved in the Measuring the Cooperative Difference Research Network, which is trying to make waves and measure this thing that in some ways can very easily be measured, and in other ways it's a little bit harder to put our finger on it. So we're all in the middle of that process together, and you've seen some of the research that's come out of that, but up until 2015 will remain funded by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, and so we'll keep doing good work, and we'd love to have more people involved, so there's information out there. But again, I speak on behalf of a lot of people that care a lot about what you're doing, and are impressed so much by what you're doing together, and so I want to celebrate you for that, so thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Paul. Now I'd like to ask Mr. Ken McKinnon to come forward. He's going to introduce our honored guest for this evening, Monsieur Simon d'Entremont.
Thank you. Good evening, fellow cooperators, friends, colleagues, special guests. The province of Nova Scotia, particularly the Department of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism, has been a key partner and supporter of our cooperative and credit union system. It is fitting to have as our keynote speaker this evening their Deputy Minister, Simon d'Entremont. In January 2012, Mr. d'Entremont was appointed Deputy Minister for the Nova Scotia Department of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism. Prior to this appointment, Mr. d'Entremont worked for the federal government for 17 years. He was the Regional Director General Atlantic for Health Canada, the Regional Director Planning, Analysis and Coordination for Industry Canada Atlantic, and the Manager of the Canada-Nova Scotia Infrastructure Program for the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, ACOA. His first position with the federal government was with ACOA as the account manager responsible for Southwest Nova Scotia and was located in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. Mr. d'Entremont began his career as a stockbroker with the investment firm McLeod, Young & Weir. It's now a subsidiary of Scotia McLeod. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Deputy Minister Simon d'Entremont.
Hello, everyone. Hope things are going well. I'm tonight's dinner theater, I guess. Bonjour, vous tous et toutes. Je vais parler un petit peu en français ce soir, un petit peu. Hein? I'm going to speak a little bit of French tonight, I think, here and there. I don't have a PowerPoint. Don't need this thing. I think PowerPoint was starting to be the death of good oratory, right? So we're gonna talk to people and look at them while we're speaking. I'm going to try to be brief, but us government folks, sometimes it's hard to do that. You know, the Pythagorean theorem had 24 words, the Lord's Prayer, 66 words, Archimedes' principle, 67 words, 10 commandments, 179 words, and there are government regulations on the books for the sale of cabbage for 26,911 words. So we need a little bit of work sometime. We have to laugh at ourselves a little bit. I was really impressed with your agenda. I had a look at your agenda. You guys are getting into some deep stuff. I mean, I thought I'd see an agenda saying, hey, let's talk about how co-ops are good and let's talk about how co-ops are great. You guys are getting into the social, creative, development, cultural, economic, the conundrums of. I mean, I was really impressed. I thought you're having some really great conversations. First off, I should start off by saying I was kind of raised in a co-op member family. My mom and dad were members of the co-op where we did all our grocery shopping. I took the bus at the co-op for 15 years or 12 years or whatever, how long I went in school. 15 years would be a little bit long, eh? And I didn't go to university from the co-op, no, but I mean, every day I went to the co-op to take the bus, and my first mortgage was from the credit union for my first house. So, I mean, we're just born and raised in part of the co-op family. I'm part of an exclusive group, actually, in Nova Scotia of only 309,011 other people involved in the co-op movement. So, me and they, we're tight, you know? We're a pretty exclusive group. So, what are we going to do tonight? I thought to myself, I heard you guys Leslie and I were trading some emails. You know, you guys are blue skying tomorrow morning. So you guys are going to think some deep thoughts and then come some great ideas. So I thought, what better thing to do to give you just a little peek on what's my mind? You know, I've been on the job for about 9 months, and I'm still drinking through the proverbial fire hose. But I thought to myself, why don't I share with you a few things that are on my mind, the types of challenges and opportunities maybe that are on my mind, and that'll give you some things to think about. Now, my mind is biased on the economic development side. I know you guys are talking a lot more than just economic development tomorrow. But my mandate also involves rural development and tourism, and I thought I'll share a few things, and maybe tomorrow morning that'll give you some things to think about and to work on. So I'll give you some challenges, and you'll maybe find some ways to turn those challenges into opportunities, and I'll give you some opportunities, and you'll turn those opportunities into more opportunities. You're thinking, well, turning opportunities into opportunities. You can actually do that. I mean, we're working hard in our department to get benefits out of the shipbuilding opportunity, for example. And you know, we've coined the motto. A few of us. It didn't take us long when we heard we're going to get $25 billion to build ships. And within 2 days, a few of us were sitting down and saying, you know, if 20 years from now all we've done is built ships, we've missed the boat. You know, what are the other things we're going to do to spin off the benefits from building ships? So there are opportunities in our opportunities, and I'd like to encourage you to think that way. And of course, you know, we're continually faced by great opportunities brilliantly disguised as insoluble problems. So we've got to think a little bit outside the proverbial box and have a little bit of fun with that. So, je vais vous parler ce soir un petit peu de mes défis et les opportunités qui sont sur mon idée. Et puis, je vous encourage demain matin, lorsque vous avez vos sessions, de voir qu'est-ce que vous pouvez faire pour m'aider à moi. J'ai besoin des idées, il y a beaucoup de la place pour l'innovation. J'ai besoin que vous m'aidiez un petit peu avec mes défis et que vous m'aidiez à prendre plein d'avantages de nos opportunités. So let's start off maybe with a few challenges. And by the way, it's challenges and opportunities by the numbers. And you're thinking, what does by the numbers mean? It's we're going to do it Jeopardy style. I'll give you the answer, and then I'll give you what question it's the answer to. So we're going to start off 38%. That's the number of Nova Scotians who lack some literacy and numeracy skills needed to participate fully in the new economy. And that certainly is an issue. Now, I'm not taking shots at any individuals here. The reality is, you know, my trigonometry my trig from grade 11 needs a little bit of work too. If we don't continuously, in the workplace, upgrade our skills, they get a little bit stale. And then when we need to use them to participate in the new economy using new technologies, new ways of doing business, they're going to be a little bit, they're going to have some needs to be upgraded. So the reality is business in Nova Scotia has a very poor record of investing in their employees. So that's something that's on my mind and something that needs to change. And investing in a skilled workforce is critically important for us in economic development, and critically important, and we'll maybe throughout the evening here figure out how it plays out in our rural communities. The reality is, when I was in the economic development business, I started 17 years ago, I was on the tail end of a trend where people would say, build it and they will come. And the build it when they will come was usually talking about buildings, let's build a building and people will come and fill it. And if you were in the economic development business, the holy grail was having an empty building somewhere that you could entice people to come into your building to start a business. Steve London and I, who heads Nova Scotia Business Inc., the province's business development arm, we talk a lot. And I asked him recently, I said, Steve, when's the last time someone asked you for a building? He said, it's been years since anyone said, Steve, we'll come to Nova Scotia and set up our business if you've got an empty building. They all ask the same question. Do you have the people that I need to start my business? Do you have 32 people who know how to use SAP? Do you have 162 IT operators? Do you have 57 welders? Those are the types of things that they need. So building a skilled workforce is the new build it and they will come. You might be thinking maybe the dropout rate has something to do with the number of people we have in our workforce who need upgrading. It's not the dropout rate, it's the drop-in rate that's the problem. We've got great mechanisms to take people back into schools and so on, and we need to maximize that opportunity. So, maintenant je vais pousser au deuxième. Le deuxième, 100 000. 100 000, c'est le nombre de personnes de moins qu'il va avoir dans la main-d'œuvre dans 25 ans en Nouvelle-Écosse, comparé à maintenant. So, 100,000. 100,000 is how many fewer people will have in the workforce 25 years from now. So, we're facing a real change in Nova Scotia, as is happening in a lot of parts around the world. If you look at a map or a demographic chart of Nova Scotia that starts 25 years ago and finishes 25 years from now, it's this big rounded curve that goes up and starts going down. The reality is, and where is it at its peak? If you look on the map, it's somewhere between last year and 3 years from now, 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there, the population in Nova Scotia is going to max out, start going down again. And the reality is the population over the next 25 years is maybe going to drop by 50,000. But the population of working age people is going to drop by over 100,000 as the population gets older. And we've always been growing our businesses and growing our organizations by having more labor. And that's how we grow. We're really going to have to think that paradigm around. We're not going to be able to grow by having more people. The only way we're going to be able to grow or do more or produce more or whatever we need to do is actually to be more productive. We'll talk about that in a minute. And another thing just to mention as well is the population shifts that are happening in Nova Scotia and big parts of rural Nova Scotia over the last 5 years, population may have shrunk by as much as 5%, more in a couple other counties. But where has it grown? It's grown by 5% in Halifax and in Antigonish County. Well, it doesn't take you very long to figure out what's going on there. People are going to school, they're not coming back. So that's, and the other issue is this is not unique to Nova Scotia. And population shifts like this are not the result of any policies or activities or something you did or something you didn't do. This is a phenomenon that's taking place in many parts of North America, but something that's really on our radar screen is something we're doing a lot of thinking about in the department. Next number, 75%. 75% is the productivity level of the Nova Scotia workforce compared to the rest of Canada. And the Canadian productivity levels of the workforce is running 10 or 20% behind that of the US. So that's something that's seriously on our mind. We need, as I mentioned earlier, if the workforce is going to shrink and we need to produce more, do new things, we're going to have to find ways to be more productive. To do that, we're going to need businesses to invest in technologies. Lots of evidence that show that businesses or organizations that invest in information and communication technologies and in machinery and equipment have higher productivity. So we're really working hard trying to find ways to entice businesses and organizations to do that. 1 in 33. That is a proportion of Nova Scotia companies that export. The national average is 1 in 23. So, and exporting is important to our business because it brings in fresh new money into the province. So we're working hard to try to increase the number of exporters, take existing exporters, take them to new markets. And a big change is happening in exporting is that we're used to doing a lot of business with the US, kind of north-south trade. But the increasing trends lately and where the federal government is going with China, India, and Japan and new emerging markets is east-west trade. So we need to start thinking about how that works. And that works out well, actually, for Nova Scotia, in that being on the eastern part of the country and being a trade gateway, that's an opportunity we can take advantage of. Ensuite, je vais mentionner 150 millions et $1,25. Cela, c'est le nombre de personnes en Chine qui vivent sur ce salaire-là par jour. Donc, c'est absolument incroyable quand on pense qu'en Chine, il y a 150 millions de personnes qui vivent sur $1,25 par jour. Mais ça nous donne un point très important lorsqu'on travaille sur la main-d'œuvre et sur notre stratégie économique. Si notre stratégie économique était notre stratégie du passé, c'est d'être le moins cher pour produire des biens ici, mais il y a une main-d'œuvre dans le reste du monde qui peut toujours être moins chère que nous. On est dans une course en bas. So, 150 million and $1.25 a day. So in China, there's 150 million people who make $1.25 every day or less. So what does that tell us? Well, the challenge for us is our economic development strategy in Nova Scotia for many years was low-cost competitiveness. Let's make our products the cheapest that they can be, and that's how we're going to compete. That's going to be our advantage. But in a worldwide marketplace where you have an unlimited supply of cheap labor, you're in a race to the bottom. And the only way to win is to lose more. So that's encouraged some very not the best practices of trying to artificially keep everything down. Do you want to pay employees more? No, that's losing competitiveness. Do you want to buy machinery and equipment? No, that's going to raise our prices. So our new economic development strategy actually is flipping that right upside down, is adding value, driving up the value of products and our services by investing in our people. 7-to-1. This is the ratio of letters that I get in my mail that tell me I'm nuts versus that tell me I'm doing the right thing every time we support wind power, hydro, tidal, aquaculture, agriculture, forestry. What's happening there is that, and I'm not going to pass judgment on what's the right way or the wrong way, but I'm the economic development business and I'm trying to create jobs. But I get pressure, I get people telling me all the time, Simon, you need to create more jobs in rural Nova Scotia. People are saying, creating jobs in rural Nova Scotia is really, really important because we need to stem the tide of people leaving rural Nova Scotia and going to the cities. But I don't want any wind farms in my backyard. I don't want any aquaculture in my harbors. I don't want to hear the sound of chainsaws in my backyard. I don't want. So the reality is, while I believe very strongly that to do economic development in the province, you have to do, especially in rural parts of Nova Scotia, you've got to do two things well. The reality is natural resources are paying the bills, so you need to treat them with some respect, but at the same time, they're probably not paying for the growth. So you need to look to the new economy, and you need to look to drive ICT, knowledge-based industries, and so on. But there are people who expect us to be able to create jobs, but keep the status quo all at the same time. And I guess what I'm suggesting, and I'm not going to say who's right, who's wrong, but the reality is you can't do both at the same time. You can't preserve the status quo and create a whole bunch of new jobs, because a lot of the low-hanging fruit opportunities that we have, although we're really working hard to maximize the opportunities in the new economy and so on, the reality is in the natural resources sector is where we can have some impact in creating jobs in rural Nova Scotia. But to do that and keep the status quo going at the same time with everything staying the same is, challenging, I would say, in that every time we do it, I get a nice stack of letters telling me, don't do that. So if the voice of wanting to create more jobs in Nova Scotia, if that's what people want, then the voice of the people who want that need to start sending me letters too, needs to be as loud as the voice of people who don't. 37%. This is the growth in Canadian outbound tourism just in the last 3 years. And I'll need to explain what that means. That means in the last 3 years, the growth of Canadians leaving Canada on tourism has gone up 37%. So I had some staff recently who were down they do tourism trade shows and so on, and they overheard a US trade agent saying, Canada's the new Germany. They love to travel, they love to spend money. The point being, we are the 7th fastest growing tourism market for other countries to market to, after Malaysia, India, China, and a few others. So we have to reignite the spark of Canadians to visit other parts of Canada, because the reality is we're competing for tourists from other countries, and that's very challenging for us, by the way. The number of US visitations we've had in the last 10 years down 9%. And people are thinking, it's not great. It's true, it's not great. Canada's down 20%. We're actually doing better than the rest of Canada in attracting US tourists. But we're going to have to reignite the spark of Canadians to visit other parts of Canada pretty soon if we want to stem that. Donc, est-ce que je suis en désespoir? Je crois que c'est un gros problème. Est-ce qu'il y a 7 défis qu'on ne peut pas les surmonter? Est-ce qu'on va avoir de la misère dans l'avenir? La réponse est non. Je crois encore qu'il y a plein d'opportunités et je vais vous expliquer pourquoi. So, you're thinking, Simon, you're kind of negative here. You're telling us all the bad things going on, or you must be sitting home in the pit of despair every night, talking to your wife, and the answer is that that's not actually the case. I have some reason for some optimism, and I'm going to tell you a few examples of why. So back to by the numbers. 100 billion tons. That's how much water goes in and out of the Bay of Fundy every day. And why is that important? It's a great example of the green energy opportunity that we have here in Nova Scotia to build not only build energy sustainability for ourselves, but a whole economic development sector. And a sector that communities through CDIFs and so on have taken a great interest in. We have a great opportunity in tidal, wind, bioenergy, biodiesel. We have a great opportunity to build green energy. I mean, the price of coal is up 65 or 75% in the last 6 years, which electricity price is obviously a big challenge. But the opportunity to have a green energy cluster in Nova Scotia where we develop lots of green energy, attract green energy entrepreneurs who are building neat new battery systems and great new technologies, and the ability to sell some of that excess electricity maybe down to the States where we have 70 million people within arm's shot is a great opportunity for us to create jobs in Nova Scotia and also increase our energy sustainability. 450, c'est le nombre de personnes avec des doctorats dans le secteur des océans. Le secteur des océans, par exemple, c'est une grosse opportunité pour nous autres. Moi, j'étais en Chine dernièrement. On a amené avec nous autres des universités et des entreprises dans le secteur des marins. Puis, la classe des entreprises en Nouvelle-Écosse dans le secteur marin est de classe mondiale. On a parmi les meilleures compagnies pour faire des instruments acoustiques, des instruments pour mesurer, par exemple, la salinité de l'eau, mesurer les produits chimiques dans l'eau. On a bien sûr la pêche, océan. On a un fantastique secteur des océans ici en Nouvelle-Écosse qui est basé sur une force qu'on a dans la région. On connaît bien nos océans et on est bien attaché à nos océans. So 450 is the number of PhDs we have in oceans technology sector, in the marine sector in Nova Scotia. We have a huge hub of technology, of academic expertise, of great oceans firms. We have marine technology firms in Nova Scotia here that are world class. We went to China recently, and they have a huge appetite to buy marine sensing technology, acoustic technology. And we have world-class firms here who do that here, so it's absolutely fantastic opportunity. 39%. That's the proportion of Nova Scotians with a post-secondary degree, which is 2% above the national average. And you're thinking, gee, Simon, you just mentioned we had 38% of the workforce that we thought we had some challenges with. What's going on? Well, actually, we have a larger share than most of highly educated people. But we also... The problem is we have no middle. We have a large proportion of our population that, in the workforce, that could use some upgrading. At the same time, we have more than our fair share of highly educated people. It's a great opportunity for us because when I mentioned earlier, to attract business, having a highly skilled workforce is one of the key tools that you have at your disposal. So it's hugely important for us. $2 billion. $2 billion is the value of the tourism sector in Nova Scotia. We've been using 1.8 for a while. We just got some new StatScan information that's telling us it's $2 billion and 24,000 people who are working in the visitor economy. It's a great opportunity for us because the tourism sector generates a lot of wealth, spreads the wealth out in all parts of the province, and is a great opportunity for us, especially with youth unemployment, I think would be hugely problematic if it wasn't for a very strong tourism sector. Now, we do have a few things in the tourism sector we need to work on. We need to work on access issues, like getting a ferry up and running again in Yarmouth, which I'm working on, by the way. I've got a $21 million carrot that I'm waving in front of ferry operators. And we're working with the airport authority and attracting new air routes and so on. We're working on all those things. Product quality is something we need to work on in tourism. Interestingly enough, the tourists who come here actually have lots of money. We're not convincing them to part with enough of it. So if we can actually raise the product quality, we don't have to attract different tourists. The tourists we've got can pay. Just we need to give them better quality, they'll pay for it. We also need to work on the skill sets of our tourism sector. We're very proud of ourselves that we're very friendly here in the region. But sometimes we mistake friendliness for customer service. I mean, I went to Florida in the last year, and those people, everyone there understands, and that's something we can do better here. Not everyone in Nova Scotia is convinced that tourism is a great thing. I have people who say, Simon, why are you spending so much money in tourism? We should be spending it in aerospace, we should be spending on other things. I went to Florida, no one down there is unconvinced of the value of the visitor economy. Because I went to the gas station, the grocery store, the convenience store, the laundromat, it doesn't matter. People were acting like I was throwing $20 bills down their pockets, like I was stuffing them in there, the way they treated me. Because everyone in Florida knows that themselves, their cousin, their brother, their nephew, their next door neighbor is making a living off the tourism business. And everyone acts like it, and it's hugely important. 1.2 billion is the value of the creative sector in Nova Scotia. And that's a huge opportunity for us. We, in the economic development business, has often treated people in the creative sector like they're kind of outside the economic development business. Though they do nice things, but they don't create jobs or some such thing. The reality of the creative sector is a huge opportunity for us to be a key driver in economic development. They have a strong creative juice, innovative power. They create exportable products. So that's something that's really on our mind, trying to really drive the creative sector from an economic development perspective. I mean, there's book publishing, there's music, there's so many things there, and a great opportunity. Getting close to the end here. Over half, I'm thinking over half, that's not a number. Over half, and you're not going to know what I mean until I explain it. Over half of the number of the class of 21 Inc. of this year, whose goal in business is or activity is to help others. And you're thinking, who's 21 Inc.? 21 Inc. is, and this is when this really hit me in the face about the value of the social economy. So that's where I'm headed. Earlier this year, I was given a sneak peek of who was in the class of 21 Inc. And 21 Inc. is an organization that picks 21 young creative people under 35 who are the leaders of the future and puts them through a mentoring program for a year to get them to see nice things and meet interesting people, and to help in doing so build their leadership skills, but also ground them in the region, because a lot of these people go off for a couple of years and then they want to come back. And so these were the brightest, youngest, any 21 Inkers here or anyone who knows the 21 Inc. class, they're bright, enthusiastic people. And so I was looking at the list of the 21 Inc. class, and I was going through the names of their titles, and I was surprised to note that a lot of them were for organizations with philanthropic goals. I'm making something up, but one was like CEO of Greener Planet Inc. And the other one was the president of Diaper Recyclers International. And, the list went on and on and on. And these people who worked in organizations whose goal was to support other people in their communities. And I remember thinking to myself, we've developed a whole new class of business. When I graduated from university, you had two choices. If you were philanthropically inclined, you worked for the Boys and Girls Club on the left and recognized you'd probably never make much money. Or if you were otherwise inclined, you went to work for IBM. Now there's a whole class of organizations coming right up the middle. And this whole class of organizations coming up the middle is these social enterprises, where people can have their cake and eat it too. They can contribute to a philanthropic cause and still make money. So it's really becoming apparent to me that we have another class of of business along the lines of including creative sector. The social sector is one that we absolutely have to treat seriously. And there's something we're looking at, by the way. We're running a pilot project with the Co-op Council through the credit unions, through a loan guarantee program to test this out on the social sector. But I'm very hopeful that this is a place that's going to do really well and attract lots of attention. Of course, we need to bring down barriers for these types of new organizations, and that's something else that's on my mind. I still think I'm young enough. Every once in a while, I like sitting around with a bunch of my younger employees and having coffee and asking them questions about, like, what's on your mind, things that old timers like me haven't thought about. And these folks are talking to me about social impact bonds and crowdfunding and all these new things. And Joseph's here and he talks to me about these types of things. As government, it's really important, incumbent upon us to get with the program. To try to bring down barriers for these new types of organizations and really give them a chance. So a huge opportunity for us. So finally, my last kind of opportunity, 2.4% increase in GDP. That's going to be the increase in GDP just from shipbuilding once it's up and running. So once the shipbuilding program is up and running, hot and heavy, it's going to add 2.4% to our GDP. That's a huge, huge number and a huge, huge opportunity for us. Between shipbuilding, we got $25 billion over the next 25 years. We've got Shell and British Petroleum each going to spend $1 billion in the offshore over the next 5 years. We got the Lower Churchill and the Maritime Transmission Link going to be $7 or $8 billion. Not that it's all going to be built here in Nova Scotia, but we've got a lot of Nova Scotia people going there and bringing back money. We have huge opportunities right in front of us. Now, some of you may be saying, well, that's true, Simon, but a lot of this stuff's going to happen in Halifax, and what's it going to do for us? A huge part of our strategy is to actually take those economic benefits and drive them out through the province. We're working, the Conference Board of Canada is suggesting that a shipbuilding opportunity, for example, that 32% of those ships are going to be built in Nova Scotia. Well, every percent that I can drive that up is like a couple $100 million for Nova Scotia, and every percent that I fail to deliver on that is a couple $100 million lost. We are hugely motivated and getting ourselves organized to make sure that companies in Nova Scotia, as part of the supplier development chain, can participate in that we have the workforce to take advantage of that, and we're working really hard to do that. So hard that I actually set up a shop in my department called the Major Investments Projects Office, whose sole goal is to take full economic advantage of these major opportunities. So we're having supplier development workshops around the province, trying to bring companies and tell them, do you know that you could be part of building ships? One neat thing we're doing is we hired Duke University, who's an expert at this, to develop a global value supply chain of ships. Interestingly, not many Nova Scotia companies are going to do business with the Irvings. Nova Scotia companies are going to do business with a company who's doing business with a company who's doing business with the Irvings. So we're actually hired Duke University to do the anatomy of a ship. We're going to figure out where do all these parts of a ship come from, and then we're going to figure out which Nova Scotia companies can do business with those companies. And we're going to link those up, and we're going to work hard to make sure that happens. So, and there's great companies, by the way, Nova Scotia, in Clare, AF Thériault, Allendale Electronics, and Lockport. We have lots of companies who have great capability and who can be part of hopefully building ships in the future. So, c'est quoi mon analyse? C'est quoi mon analyse? Je crois qu'on a plein d'opportunités. Je crois qu'on va bien faire dans le futur. Ce qu'on appelle notre pipeline est plein de projets. Nos officiers sont en train de travailler sur beaucoup de choses. Et mon attente, c'est que bientôt, on va très bien faire économiquement. So, what's my analysis? I actually think we're going to do pretty good. We've got a huge pipeline of projects to go in. Not just these mega projects I mentioned. In terms of back at my shop, I got officers, and I've got a guy by the name of Marvin Robar who works for us, and he's been in the business 35 years. And I was talking to him recently, and he said, "Are you busy?" He said, he's never seen us busier. And I mean, this guy wrote his first contract on a slate, I think, So we are busy, and there's lots going on. When the economic development business busy is good. So what's my analysis? We've got huge, excellent business activity. We've got excellent natural resources. We've got a great province, all over the province. We got great things to see. It's full of great people. We have a hugely motivated citizenry and co-op movement. We've got folks like yourselves who are here, who are mobilizing or are getting ready. I think it's a great opportunity for us. I think we have a lot going on. I have to say, a pleasure it's working with Diane and the team at the Co-op Council. It's been a great partnership with us, with the Credit Union Network, for example. We put up $55 million in loans over the last 10 years through our Credit Union Loan Guarantee programs. It's an absolutely wonderful partnership. There's nothing like working with partners who are connected in the community. You know what's going on in the community, and are working there. So, I hear you guys are blue skying tomorrow. I'd really like you to just take some of the ideas I've got. There's lots of room for innovation here. Winston Churchill, I think, who said, we've run out of money and we have to think. The reality is money's getting tight in government, so we need partners, we need innovation. There's lots of room for good ideas. I hope that you have some of them, and I hope that you can take a few of the things that I mentioned and think, how can I turn that into an idea? What can we do to help Simon do his job? Because you may be thinking, what are we? He's the guy, he's got all the money, he makes all these big decisions. The reality is you have a huge amount of horsepower at your disposal. You have a huge network, they're committed, they're in their communities, you manage a huge amount of assets, you have a huge amount of infrastructure, you have your great opportunity. And we need to work together. I mean, I've never been white river rafting, but a buddy of mine went once, and I said, did they give you lots of training before you went in? They said, they throw you in the boat, there's only 2 rules. Don't fall out of the boat, and all row in the same direction. And those are the only 2 rules. So, I mean, those are kind of the rules for us too, right? We just got to let's not fall out of the boat, and let's row in the same direction, and I think we'll be okay. I'm going to finish up with just a little story about John F. Kennedy in the mid-'60s. They'd launched the race to be the first on the moon. In the mid-'60s, John F. Kennedy is walking around Cape Canaveral, and he's getting a tour of the whole place. How does it work? So he gets to tour mission control, and he talks to the mission controllers and says, what do you do here? And they said, well, we make sure that everything's a go before we hit the launch button and make sure the sequences are right. Then he goes and talks to the rocket scientist. And what are you guys doing? Well, we make sure that the fuel mixture is right and all that fun stuff. So he bumps into a couple of guys sweeping the floors, and he says, ask the first one, what do you do here? Making a living. He asks the second one, what are you doing here? He says, I'm helping put people on the moon. That's it. Thanks very much.
Okay, I think we have some time for some questions, if that's all right, Simone. Anybody? I see a hand up already back here.
One over there.
Larry Haven, St. Mary's University.
Hi, you were mentioning earlier the low rate of investment by Nova Scotia companies in research and development and worker training. What I want to ask you is, how are you going to get them to start doing some of that? The reason I ask is I was the author of 2 studies in recent years. The first one showing that despite steady, not spectacular, but steady rises in worker productivity in Nova Scotia and general prosperity, average real earnings have declined in real terms. In other words, the average worker is taking home less than they did 30 years ago, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, and it's still going down. The second study was of the labor standards regime in Nova Scotia, which showed that with three exceptions, Nova Scotia is one of the worst countries in the country, one of the worst provinces in the country in terms of labor standards. What we're doing is, by depressing wages, we're actually discouraging employers from investing in R&D, because they'll only do it if their labor costs rise so that they have to invest in plant and equipment and R&D and worker training. How do you propose to do that?
Good question. So we at the province, we've got a program called WIPC, where we put $10 million a year to lever the investment of the private sector in workforce training. So last year, about over 20,000 employees in Nova Scotia got workforce training through that program. That's a pretty good dent in the workforce. We can certainly do better, but we've got that carrot right now. We've got $10 million carrot trying to encourage companies to do that. On the productivity piece, that one has lots of different challenges, and investment in R&D you mentioned in particular. We're trying to get, in Nova Scotia, about 20% of the research and development is done by the private sector, and the rest is done by government-funded labs or universities, mostly funded by the federal government and a bit by the province. In the rest of in Canada, about 60% of R&D is done by businesses. So one of our challenges, we've got lots of small and medium-sized enterprises in Nova Scotia. A lot of R&D is done by bigger businesses, and the bigger businesses, most of them that we have in Nova Scotia, are branch plants of international businesses, and usually they don't do their R&D in the branch plants, they do it in head office. So we also have a program called PIP, the Productivity Innovation Program, which we offer 20-cent dollars to businesses to invest in productivity improvements in machinery and equipment. We annually give some money to the Nova Scotia Research Innovation Trust to encourage R&D in universities that's suited for business. We also have a neat little program called the Voucher Program, because one of the things we're trying to do is actually encourage collaboration between business and universities, where there's great work being done in each, but need to be connected a little bit more. Because we need to try to get the research and development taking place in universities, a lot of it is very good, out in the hands of the private sector. So through this voucher program, we actually give a blank check to a business to go buy research, like a prototype or something like that, from a university. And that's encouraging that collaboration, that work done together. So we're plugging away at it. We've got some other strategies around trying to encourage ICT adoption by business. But I agree that one of the things that needs to happen here in Nova Scotia, we need to drive up the value of our products. That way we can pay people more and drive up wages. And it's a big part of our strategy. I think we've had a bad habit of trying to artificially depress wages lower, and we got to try to keep driving them up. Other questions? Commentaires en français? Il y a des commentaires? Questions?
Okay, then if there are no more questions, I would like to ask Mr. Anglos Lafort, Chair of Le Conseil Coopératif Acadien de la Nouvelle-Écosse, to give a formal thank you.
Ça va?
Thank you. Bonsoir tout le monde. Good evening, everyone. It's indeed, I'm very pleased this evening to thank Mr. D'Entremont on your behalf for his keynote address. Je suis très fier de votre part de remercier M. D'Entremont pour son discours de ce soir. Votre message, M. D'Entremont, était très clair. Il y a du travail à faire. On a tous un rôle à jouer. Et il faut travailler ensemble pour le bien de notre province. Cooperatives and credit unions have a natural grassroots connection with community leaders. It is often these leaders who encourage their community to work together to meet their social and economic needs. Without questions, cooperatives have a long and proud history in this province, and they've built a strong foundation to help this province meet the economic challenges of today and tomorrow. As you so well put it, our challenge is to further leverage our connection with our community leaders and work closely with others and our government to focus on building a stronger economy, especially for our struggling rural communities. Au nom du comité directeur de la conférence, j'ai l'honneur de vous présenter ce petit cadeau en appréciation de votre discours de ce soir. Et c'est un cadeau qui a été fait, c'est un cadeau d'artisanat qui a été produit par une coopérative de la province, spécialement chez Tican. And along with this small token, the conference steering committee will also be making a donation in your name to the Cooperative Development Foundation of Canada, SOCODEVI, la Société de coopération pour le développement international, which are foundations that help develop co-ops around the world. Alors, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.